Thank you, everybody, for coming. If you're not yet on our email list and would like to be, there's a sign-up sheet over there. If you're already on it, don't bother signing up. What we use that for is to send out notices about the upcoming meeting. So we usually send out an initial notice 3 weeks ahead of time, then a reminder 1 week ahead, and then another reminder the day before. So you can put it on your calendar and not forget it. We don't use it for anything else other than the club business. So once in a while, there might be something else, like a message that goes out saying, okay, we need a speaker. Would somebody please volunteer or something like that? But we don't spam or anything, so it's okay to be on the email list. On the back table back there, there's a couple of keys for the ladies' room and men's room. Right around the corner outside. At the moment, it's being cleaned, but pretty soon it'll be spick and span, so you can go use that. Feel free to get up and go anytime you need to. We've got food in the back. We've got cookies and candies, and very big thanks to Edward Wells for bringing some pizza for everybody. A thank you to the High Technology Development Corporation, which manages this facility and allows us to have our meetings here. So very big thank you to them. Tonight we have Ken Berkun, right over here. Woke him up. He is both an inventor and an investor, so he has been in and seen thousands of presentations given, some of them good, most of them questionable, he tells me. And he's learned a lot by having given presentations and listened to presentations. Most of us, at some point in our development of our invention, needs to give a pitch to somebody. We've got to tell them about our product in a short period of time. There's a thing called the elevator pitch. And it means if you happen to get onto an elevator with a potential investor, and you've got just between the floor you get on and whenever they're going to get off, to explain your invention and get them to commit to money, that's how much time an elevator pitch is. So you really have to have it down pat. You've got to get your figures and your numbers and descriptions really well down so you understand it and it comes across well. So Ken is going to take over now and give the his presentation on how to give presentations.
Thank you, Roger. Hi, I'm Ken. And so we'll start with introductions. So as Roger said, I am both an entrepreneur and an investor as a member of the Hawaii Asians. My own background is technical, but I'm currently running my company Labels That Talk. I've also had marketing roles and kind of various management roles. I've had one successful exit, which is how I was able to move to Hawaii, but not quite enough to retire, which is because we had 4 founders, which is 3 founders too many. We actually did pretty well because of the 4 founders, 2 of us are still friends. One of the other guys had to be at least civil to us in public, and the other one is persona non grata, so that's pretty typical. We only had 1 divorce among the founders. Anyways, I'm working on startup number 2, which has taken a very long time, and I'm doing a lot of pitches, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. So before I go any further, I want to get a feel for who's in the audience here. How many of you are inventors? All of you, okay, that's good. That's the right thing. How many of you have done any kind of pitch or presentation about your presentation? We've got a few, right? Would any of you like to do a short pitch today and receive some critique about that? Because I have allocated some time. I will be doing my pitch later on after I do part of my presentation. And then if anyone else wants to, let me know. And we promise not to be Shark Tank and be nice to you and give constructive criticism. Because it's much more fun to learn watching other people do stupid. I mean, other people do interesting things. Okay, so topics we're going to cover today are the fundamentals of being in front of a group, which is prepping and getting ready for the presentation, and then some basic presentation techniques. A few tips on PowerPoint, on the use of props and demos, and then I'll go into investor pitches in particular. Yes?
Sorry. On the previous slide, it said something about angel and VC funds. What's that?
Okay, so angels are people who do, there are 4 levels of investing. The first one is you put your own money in. The second is friends, family, or the 4 C's, friends, families, fools, and former friends. And then after that are angels, which are people, individual investors who put money in. And there's a technical requirement for that you have to be what's called an accredited investor, which means that you need $1 million in money that you kiss away, or $300,000 a year for income. And then venture capitalists, the VCs, are people who are professional investors. So those are kind of the different levels.
Can I ask you one question on that? If you got an angel investor, do they take a portion of your business, or do you just have to pay back what they gave you, or?
Typically, any investor, by definition of investing, is taking a portion of your business. Now, you can get loans, and there are something called a convertible note, which is a loan that converts into a piece of your business, and that's very typical. But ultimately, most investors are investing for a piece of your business.
Is that
believe it or not, that's
including,
good.
like if they give you $100,000 for, a
They
loan,
get
do you give them $100,000 plus a piece of the business, or do they get just the kind of?
They
the
just
piece of the
typically they just get the piece of the business, and how much they get is what's called valuation, and we'll touch on that briefly. However, we're not going to be talking about the fundamentals of investing. This is really not about investing and a bunch of other things. This is about the pitch itself. But I'm happy to take questions like that, so that's fine. And let me say that I am happy to take questions at any point, and so feel free to interrupt. Okay. So of course, you will, if you're serious about bringing something to market, you will be doing presentations. There's just no way around it. If you are not willing to stand up in front of groups ranging from 1 person to 50 or 100, then you are in the wrong business. If you think that you can sit in the back of your house, in your garage, and produce a better mousetrap and get it into the marketplace and make a bunch of money without talking to anyone, you cannot do that. And I love to use my friend in Seattle, who'll go nameless, who actually developed a social network while being off the net himself, and wouldn't make phone calls, won't do purchases over the internet because of privacy and security issues, and is terrified of talking to people. And he thought that he could invent a social network. Needless to say, did not succeed. When you come and do an angel pitch or a VC pitch, this could be a life-changing experience if all goes right. That's the goal. The goal is to get enough money to make so much money that it changes your life. Therefore, you should be terrified. And if you're not nervous, then you're doing something wrong. So just get used to the concept of that. So now we're going to jump into some of the fundamentals here. First of all, never use the word basically. Okay, when I train people and have drawing classes, I have my basically buzzer. And if I ever hear the word basically, you get buzzed. Also, watch out for the word so. So, what this means, and so what that means, other basic, face the audience, do not do this, and read your PowerPoint. So, forbidden words and face the audience while speaking slower. Speaking slower. I did say speak slowly. However fast you're speaking, slow down. You're probably speaking too fast. It's been a rare presentation that I've seen where someone's speaking too slowly, and certainly not me. But vary your voice. Sometimes it does make sense to get a little excitement, get a little hyped up, and then slow down. There's nothing worse than a monotone of a presentation. But speaking clearly is an issue for me, and I've gone back and watched videotapes of my presentation, and I don't know how people actually understand me. But slow down. You're probably talking too fast. Even if you only have 3 minutes, it is better to give less information that is better understood than to try to get everything out there. One of the things you need when you are selling is a executive summary. And your goal is to have a 1-page executive summary. Very hard to do. It took me 3 years to condense my executive summary from 5 pages to 2 pages to 1 page, but it can be done. And depending who you ask, someone famous like Daniel Webster said, I'm sending you a long letter now because I don't have time to send you a short one. It's very hard to do a 3-minute, much harder to do a 3-minute presentation than a 30-minute presentation. But even if you only have so much time, slow down. So just remember nothing else. Face the audience, speak slowly, and I forget the third one. And now, empty your pockets. You don't want to jangle up there. I can remember I went to one of my first public speaking classes. The guy stands up and has a stand up and shake, and we're all jingling and stuff. Empty your pockets, no jingling. As you do your presentation and you get questions, do not lie and do not make up answers. It is perfectly okay to say, I don't know. And we'll come back to this, but taking questions and don't know the answer is just an excuse to have another meeting. So that's absolutely fine. But lies get complicated really, really fast. So you don't want to do that. You can always say, I'll get back to you. It's important to have diagrams, as everyone who knows PowerPoint says, less words, more pictures, so I just stuck in a meaningless diagram. Okay, now preparation is important. So get here early, bring 2 of everything if you can possibly do it, call up and make sure that they have the right gear. If you have a Macintosh, make sure that you have the right cable for the Macintosh to the projector, because they won't. If you are in a meeting and have a partner, have your partner take notes so that you don't have to. Whatever happens, be polite. I have been in very few meetings that were hostile. You've heard a lot of words, vulture capitalists, and they're out to get you. In fact, that's only happened to me a couple of times. But you just have to be polite. I've, been tempted to just walk out, but I haven't done that. And someday my goal was to walk into a VC and say, you've invested in stupider things than this. Don't forget your business cards, and dress appropriately. If anything, dress up, not down. It shows that you care, that you take them seriously. If you show up in tennis shoes and shorts at an investor meeting, even if this is Hawaii, gently music, you just don't care about them. And sweet talk the admin, the receptionist. That's where they know everything, they control everything. Always be really, really nice to the admin because they run the world.
Bottom line, be nice to everybody.
Yeah, in general, be nice to everybody, but if you can't, which is hard for some people. And so I actually have a checklist when I go out. It's not entirely exactly like this one, but it's literally a piece of paper where I can check things off. Especially in my case, where I carry a lot of props and demo gear, especially in the past. It's simplified for me now. Checklist really helps. Now, why are you there? So people think I'm going to go into venture capitalism and I'm going to ask for money. Well, you don't always want to do that. When I started my current company, I knew we weren't ready for venture capitalism. You do not want to go into a meeting that's not appropriate. It is, however, always okay to go to the VC and say, I'm not ready to take your money yet, but I'd like to learn from you. People are egotists, especially VCs, and they love to tell you what they know. They love to tell you what they know. And so just going to say, I'm thinking about bringing this product to market. I know it's way too early, but who are the right VCs to talk to? I'm not sure it's you. This is a software product. I see that you've funded hardware. This is hardware. But who do you know? What do you think of the product itself? Feedback and so on. That's okay. But if you walk into a meeting and say, I don't have a product yet, but I want to raise $1 million, they're going to laugh you out. It's not going to be put out. People do that all the time. But I say, I have an idea for a product. I have an idea for a product. It's going to be a great product. It's going to be the world's greatest social network. It's going to go viral, and you'll poison the lake if you do that. So understand why you're there, and people will talk to you about just about anything if you're open and upfront about what it is that you want and it's realistic. For a presentation, bring a clock. Don't count on your iPhone clock because the thing will turn off. The display goes off in about 5 minutes unless you remember to set that. So make sure there's a clock that you can see. If you tell someone that you're going to take a certain length of time, take that length of time or less. Do not take more. We always ask how much time do you have. Even if we set up a meeting and we confirm it was an hour, when we walk in, we sit down, we do our introductions, and we say, just like to confirm that we have an hour of your time. And that's just a good thing. And sometimes you discover that you have more and sometimes less. When you're doing a funding pitch, it must be the founder of the company. If you send in your CTO or vice president of sales, you won't raise money. They are not investing in those people. They're investing in you. If you have a group of founders, then you at least need a majority of them, if not all. It shows that you're serious about it. Unless they have some really good excuse, like they're meeting with guys' competition across town, that works. Learn how you operate as a team. In most cases, you are a team. You're not an individual doing this. It takes more than one person to get a product out the door. So learn to operate as a team. I've been working, Guy, who's my partner in this thing, is someone I've known over 30 years. We worked together for a lot of that time in various relationships. You know, he was my boss, and now I'm his boss. If we don't raise more money pretty soon, he's going to be my boss again. But we've learned how to work without interrupting each other, and I'm very bad at interrupting. Most of this is my problem. But over the years, it's taken us years, yeah, but we're pretty good now about working together, not stepping on each other's toes. But that's something you have to learn and practice. So that you look like a team, you look professional. Whether you feel professional is another story. So practice. There's just nothing that beats practicing. I hate practicing, and if I'm doing an investment pitch that I have not done before, then I will practice by myself, and then I'll practice in front of my family, and then I'll practice with friends. At this point, I've done my pitch often enough that I don't have to practice too often, but you do get new opportunities. I was in a pitch competition in Las Vegas in August, and it was a 2-minute presentation, 7 minutes of Q&A afterwards, and it had all kinds of interesting variations. But that one I practiced and practiced and practiced, and we practiced the timing, and my partner operated the slides, and we had to practice the timing because I don't memorize. He didn't know, how was he going to know when to hit the next button, and so I had to memorize certain key phrases that I would remember to blurt out at hopefully the right time. Anyway, practice. Nothing beats practice. Did I mention practicing? So you got to practice some more. It will make all the difference. And it's no fun. I hate practice. So let's talk about questions. So there are 2 schools of thought about questions. So you answer them when they're asked. You say, hold your questions to the end. Generally, answer them when they ask, especially if they're the people with the money. But you have to maintain control of the room. You cannot go off in every direction, and you have to have the discipline to bring it back to what you want to talk about. So Deborah over here wants to know about different kinds of investors and how that works. I try to give a short answer and then bring it back here because that's a whole separate presentation, and I can't be tempted to show off how much I know, which I'm not making up anyway. But there's a group that says go through your presentation and answer all the questions at the end. Again, I've discussed this with a lot of people, and the general consensus is take the questions when they're asked, keep the answers short, and move on. One thing that's come up is, okay, I've got this, and I come to this in a couple more slides. Now, this is a really tricky situation because you do have a couple more slides, so you're tempted to jump ahead in the slides, and then you have to go back. So unless you really know all the PowerPoint commands, don't do it. You will get lost. And that's happened to me any number of times, even though I know PowerPoint like the back of my hand. You say, oh, well, I have that up here, and then you get lost and you find around, and that just screws up the whole presentation. So there's no good answer to that. If you have a slide and they ask a question and there's a few slides in front of you, then go ahead and jump forward. But if it's at the end, Just try to do a succinct answer without the slide, or you'll get lost and you'll be sorry. The classic approach to a presentation is to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And it's all about repetition. This is actually another meaningless diagram, but it's supposed to show how you will hold on to information longer if you've been told over and over again. People will also only remember the last thing you said. And so if you've got something important to say it last. I'd say it several times. And if there's some way that they can misinterpret something that you said, they will do that. So be very clear. And I'm going to give you an example of something like that in my pitch, something that we're struggling with right now, where people keep remembering the wrong thing. So if you can, build repetition in. Did I mention practice? No one wants it. I mean, the reason I'm doing this is because people don't. You don't want to. And I think, oh my God, I've got to practice this presentation again. And it just, sorry. Just have to. So you could do worse than go and read everything the guy comes out and has read. Everyone know who he is. Anyone, a local boy done good. Punaho grad, went to Microsoft, was the first Microsoft evangelist. Was really takes full responsibility for making the Macintosh popular. He has his 10, 20, 30 rule, which you'll now see all over the web, but I like to give him credit for it, which is no more than 10 lines in 20 minutes and 30-point font. So I actually thought I'd show you here so no one can read 10-point font from the back of the room, right? This is not an eye test. This is 30-point. I'm using 36 here. Your fonts will vary in how readable they are. I happen to be using Century Gothic because that's what this template that I downloaded uses. You never need anything other than these 4 fonts. And whatever you do, don't use Comic Sans.
Don't use what?
Comic Sans. Okay, it was very popular for your fortunate people seem to have gotten the message. And we won't even go into why, but you'll be laughed out of the room if you use Comic Sans. So don't use lots of fonts. You don't need more than 2 fonts per slide. You don't need more than 4 fonts in your whole lifetime unless you're an absolute expert designer and know what you're doing. You will see things that says you should use all pictures and no text, or I've seen as few as 6 words per slide. Now, I'm not doing that in this presentation because this is not an investor presentation. This is more like a classroom presentation. And I wanted the stuff to be in the slides because you can download these slides and look at them later on. So all the information is there. But if you put a lot of stuff up on a slide, people can't read it. Do not read your slides out loud. Again, don't face like this. Always face both the left side and the right side of the room. People will tend to look to the right side of the room. But we left-handers will tend to look at the left side of the room. But face everybody, and when you're picking various things to say, pick an individual and say it to him or her. Okay, and then pick somebody else. So anyway, don't crowd your slides no matter what. The best presentations I'm seeing now are almost all pictures, and they've disposed of bullet points entirely. I'm not there yet. I haven't figured out how to do that. I'm not that good of a designer. But you'll see a new trend with, you see it in iOS 7. iOS 7 is a perfect example of that. They've got the really skinny fonts and kind of lightweight text and more graphics. And I admire people who can do that, but I'm not talented enough to do that. Special effects, and yes?
Why don't you, when it emphasize something, why don't you read it? Or emphasize it?
Yeah, you can read a little bit. You can read one line. No one's suggesting you don't do that. I can do that here. But don't read the whole slide. Don't read the whole slide. And especially just don't have a slide with 30 lines of text that you're reading out loud. People, you want the slide to be kind of backup material to what you're saying. You don't want people to be absorbed in the slide and not hear what you're saying. And you're looking for a balance. So if you go on the net and you read about this, you'll find things all over the map. And the only thing people agree on is don't put too much on the slide. There is no right or wrong for how much is too much. But I will tell you right now that animations are dangerous, and you should not use very many of them. We do not want to get lost in what you're doing. So if I see something like this, I get very annoyed. If you have to show me the picture, just put the picture up. Okay? This is wasted time coming in and going away, and there's all kinds of stuff like that. And I learned you can download animations. They have Microsoft has a whole set of animations pre-made that you can download and modify. Keep them to a minimum if you use any animations. When you do slide-to-slide transitions, pick one and stay with it. This one came with a very simple transition, and I just stayed with that. Don't do all your shadow effects and your flashing in and out and things like that. It's just distraction. It does not add to the presentation. We want the content, not the funny stuff. Also, none of those things work when it's on paper or on SlideShare, or when you or if you're on a webinar and this is being sent remotely. All the animations just kind of break up and fall apart. So just remember that while I'm here in front of you today, you may go home and look at this in SlideShare. None of those animations are going to work. They just disappear. So keep that in mind. Video, sometimes you need to include the video you want to, but it really has a tendency to break. There are some tricks about convincing PowerPoint to embed the video into the presentation or the audio as opposed to being a separate file. You need to understand how that works if you're going to do this. So by default, audio above a certain size lives outside as a separate file, and when PowerPoint goes to look at it on your host's computer that you put it on, well, it's not there. It's in some other file directory, and it's not going to work. So you can tell PowerPoint to embed the video or the audio in the presentation, in which case it goes with the presentation, but now the presentation becomes very big, and you can't necessarily email it. Audio is very important to my presentation. Generally, when I do presentations, I have a fair amount of audio in the presentation, and we go through a lot of trouble to make sure it's going to work, including carrying speakers with us. We check to see whether there's an audio system available. We test it when we get there. We get there early. We call up and we say, can we have the room 15 minutes before the presentation so we can get in and set up and test it. We test the audio. We test our own speakers. We decide which is best. And I've learned how to make sure the audio is always embedded. And when we send someone the presentation, we tell them, turn your audio on and so on, because that's what business I'm in. But all those things are dangerous and have a tendency to break. So if you're going to use them, test them thoroughly and make sure that you really need them before you do. So what not to do, tons of text, which we've already talked about. Read the text, look at the screen, avoid animations. By the way, Macintosh PowerPoint is fantastic because it gives the presenter, it shows you the next slide, it shows you your notes, and it gives you some other controls you don't get on that PowerPoint on the PC here. So there are some advantages. But be aware that your presentation will get screwed up going from Mac to PowerPoint and back again. They changed the format, so if you do copy it onto another computer, or you put it on a memory stick and bring it with you and put it into another computer, then you have to go through it and make sure it didn't get screwed up. So again, things to test. When you go into a pitch presentation, never ask for a non-disclosure, an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Again, you'll get laughed out of the room. Investors will not sign an NDA ever. And that's because they're shown so many things that they're just not even going to try to keep track of it all. They are not going to steal your presentation. That's not what they're there for. They're not going to steal your invention. They're there to invest in inventions, not to do inventions themselves. Yes, it does happen every once in a while. It's not going to happen to you. Okay? It's just not. If your invention is so simple that you can describe the whole thing in 3 minutes to somebody that gets all the ins and outs of it, they could go get themselves, and you don't have much of an invention. Sorry, I hate to tell you that. I know I'm breaking dreams throughout the room. One hopes that what you're doing is complicated enough that someone is not going to just go out and steal the idea. But if you're not comfortable going to an investor and talking about your invention without an NDA, then again you're in the wrong game, because there's not an investor on the planet who will sign an NDA. It just doesn't happen. And by the way, it doesn't even happen as you get further into the investing and so on. Yes?
I read a quote someplace recently, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it said something like, don't be afraid of presenting your invention, because if it's a new idea, you won't even be able to shove it down people's throats.
And that is so true. And we're actually going to get to that in the future slide. So don't do an NDA. Watch out for buzzwords and never apologize. Okay, you don't say, I'm sorry about this presentation. It's not appearing like I wanted it to do. You just go ahead anyway. In fact, it's a good rule of life. Never apologize unless you've really hurt somebody, and you've got to make good on it somehow. But for a general screw up while you're presenting, you just move on. Or make a joke out of it, but don't apologize. Just keep going. Don't go flipping back and forth from slides. Oh, I have this over in slide 2, and then go back. No, keep it moving forward. Keep the flow going. That's really what it's all about. So here's a little buzzword list that we could probably have a lot of fun coming up before. Yeah?
Hi, just a question. Would you want to have the original before you went into it?
Patents are a whole separate discussion. I can't say here in 2 minutes whether you should or you should not. It depends very much on the situation. However, if you are going into an investor presentation, generally that does not count as public disclosure. So one of the things about patents is you have a year after public disclosure to file. But if you're in a room with a selected group of individuals, even if they haven't signed a sheet of paper, it's probably not a public disclosure. On the other hand, my attorney likes to remind me of the person who told his wife something, and later in court that qualified as a public disclosure. So it's how good your lawyer is, probably. So I don't have a yes/no answer on that. There is no yes/no answer. Okay, so watch out for some of these buzzwords. Big things right now are MVP, minimum viable product, and freemium, and gamify, and everyone's paid for it. All we have to do is get 1% of the market in China, and we will be filthy rich. As soon as you talk about that, and I'm not here again to talk about how you value your company and your actual business plan. But you've got to build your valuation some other way, from the ground up, how many you think you can sell and so on, not by just saying I'm going to grab 10% of a particular market.
What does open the kimono
It means it's enough. I'm going to open the kimono. I'm going to share information with you openly that we might not show to other people. And what it says is, of course, otherwise I'm lying to you. It's saying, let's be frank. Never say let's be frank. That means other times you're not being frank. The rest of the time I'm lying to you, but right now I'm going to tell you the truth. So don't say let's be frank. Okay, so what you have to say is much more important than your appearance. Nonetheless, it should not be amateur, and design is important, as is shown here. I'm not a designer. When I've got something really important to do, I hire a designer and pay them. Like this presentation we did in Las Vegas, I knew that I was going to be up against good people, and I couldn't design the slides. But nonetheless, I just downloaded this template from Microsoft Office.com for free, and it's not too bad. I did some changes to it, but you don't want your crowded slides that look like a 1990s website and blinking GIFs and things like that. When in doubt, keep it simple. Just take stuff out. And by all means, show it to people who are less important before you show it to the real people who count. And that's another hint about going to venture capitalists is go to people you don't expect to get money from first. Okay, run through a bunch of them before you go to the people you really think are going to invest. Oh, and while you're at it, grammar and spelling do matter. Neatness counts, grammar counts, spelling counts. No one minds one mistake, it's going to happen, but in general, it better be good. So memorization and notes. So as you can see here, I'm actually using some notes. That's because I haven't done this presentation before, but in investor presentation, you better know what you're talking about. Do not read, do not have notes. You do not have to memorize it word for word, and don't memorize it word for word if it means you're going to repeat it like a automaton. If you're a good actor and you memorize lines, then that's fine. I kind of paraphrase every time I do it. It's a little bit different, which does make it difficult for the slide changer. So generally, I operate my own slides. So even reading off of note cards is not such a good idea, and even worse is reading off of notes on your hand. She got a good laugh with that. Which brings me to humor. I believe in humor. I think keep them laughing and end on a high note is important. Not everyone would agree with me. And certainly awkward and bad humor, risque humor, political humor, religious humor is strictly off base, even though I just did political humor. That was not really relevant to that. But generally, you can find a lot of cartoons out there. I don't mind stealing cartoons for presentation, and leave them laughing. But not everyone agrees. Some people think this is serious business, and I think a presentation either has to tug at the heartstrings, which this is not going to do, or be so fascinating that you're going to grip your seat, which is not going to do, or leave them laughing, and that's pretty much all I'm left with. So I like to stick humor in it. And doing that, the best presentation finding no slides whatsoever. You should know your material that you can operate up without your slides. I was doing a presentation once in Singapore many years ago when we had old-fashioned 35mm slides, and it had a circular tray of slides, and the projector only worked backwards. So I did the presentation backwards. That's fine. I knew the material well enough. It didn't really matter when you do a technical presentation in that case. But you should know what you're presenting. This is your life. This is what you're doing. You are doing nothing but. This your invention. This is going to change your life and improve the world. You know your topic. So you should not need any notes whatsoever. Yes, it will not come out exactly the same, and that doesn't matter. If you show that you know what you're talking about and you care about it, that's what counts. Even this thing I did in Las Vegas, when I heard it was 2 minutes, my first implementation was don't use slides at all, 2 minutes. And then we decided, no, we didn't want to be too weird, so we wanted slides anyway. But we only did 6 slides, 2 minutes. Demos. Demos will always break. No matter how many times you've done it, a demo will break. I no longer do demos during presentations. I will do a demo when we're sitting around afterwards, when we're sitting down, and we're relaxed. And of course, I have to demo, and you have to demo. And this is a real problem, because sometimes you really have to demo, because no one's going to buy something that they haven't seen. So the best shot is in your presentation, use screenshots. Don't count on the internet. For instance, we have no internet where the Hawaii Angels meets at the Wailea Country Club. You'll be lucky to get a little bit of a signal if you have a Wi-Fi hotspot, but they just fail every time there. So don't count on an internet connection. On the other hand, nothing kills like a demo, so you've got a real problem. So what you'll probably want to do is something that's canned and fake, and you can fake a demo so long as you tell people what you're doing. We built a fake demo for my product so that it always works because it doesn't actually do anything. It's not much more than a movie, pre-recorded sound, but we know it's going to work. And so long as you tell people this is what it will look like, they understand, because people understand that demos break. And by the way, people will understand if your demo does break, because everybody knows that demos break. But nonetheless, you don't want your demo to break. So demos are tough. If you do, keep it short and sweet. For a typical demo, I will scan one barcode. And I can scan barcodes all day and make them pop and do fancy things, but one is enough. That's a 10-second demo and I'm done and move on to something else. So keep it simple. Do not dive in. I was helping somebody a week ago prepare. They're thinking about going to pitch angels, and he started with a demo, and finally I had to stop him. I said, okay, this is I'm not here to learn about your product. I'm here to talk to you about whether you're ready to go talk to the angels. So I don't need all that detail. So it's your product, you love it to death, you can talk about it all day, shut up. All right, so things that you should do, know ahead of time how much time you have, know who your audience is, I asked up front. Listen and react to the audience. If you're getting some feedback, if you see people are kind of wiggling in their chairs, you're maybe not doing something right, tell a story. You'll hear this over and over again. I haven't told this, I've told a little bit of story in here, but I used to start my presentation this way, and times have changed, so I've had to change my story, but I like this one. How many of you have kids? How many have photos or grandkids? And hopefully not the other first. Anyway, how many of you have photos of those kids? And how many of those photos are neatly organized and labeled? We have no hands, right? So we've invented a way. This is where I was at. I had a kid that had all these photos. I have terrible handwriting because I'm left-handed. I said, can't I just speak the labels of these photos? And then record them onto the photo itself and have the photo talk to me. And that's what led to the invention of sound paper, and that speaks to people. How many of you have parents who are 75 or older, and they have a half dozen, 8-10 meds that they're taking? And they show you their box, and they have to take a bag full, and they get confused. 100,000 people a year end up in the emergency room just from taking the wrong medicine. We've invented a way that medicine bottles speak and tell you clearly and simply what's in the bottle. That's the kind of message that gets through. So you tell a story and make it specific. Stay on topic, vary your voice level, start on time. Woody Allen's famous line, 80% success is just showing up. If you are doing the presentation, you better be there. You better be there early. I had a boss that said, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late. I don't know what that means, but it's great advice. Okay, so about the passion word. Hate it. Passion never cut a paycheck. Everything. You've got to be passionate about your business. Well, don't start with the passion. Start with the business. Start with the product. Start with what you're good at. Because passion is not enough, no matter what they tell you. Passion is good. You've got to show some passion. You've got to not overplay it too. But it's not enough. And you can't say, I have real passion. Don't stand up and say, I have real passion for this. That. Show it. If you ever took creative writing when you were younger, they said, don't describe something, show it. So you can show that you care. But you cannot stand up and say, I have passion. Just never even use the word. Ban it. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of presentations in general. That applies to most presentations you're going to be doing. And now I'm going to talk more specifically about the investment pitch itself. So this is strictly about the pitch itself. This is not about building your company or having all your other stuff together. I'm going to assume you have a great product, you have a great team, you've built your competitive edge or your moat, you have your product, and all you need now is a little bit of money to go out and change the world. And this is how you're going to raise that money. So we're really focused on the pitch itself. 10 to 20 slides. Oh, sorry. A few points. So what are you in this for? most of this is focused on the pitch for raising money, but as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you're just out for information or contacts. You know, you're not the right people, but you might know the right people. And flattery is always good when done right. You know, I've heard that you're the best VC in town for this kind of work, and even though I'm not raising money yet, I want to learn if this kind of thing that we're doing will have interest for you if we've achieved the following goals. And I actually did this. I went back to my VC in front of my last company, and I said, when I get to the point where the product is in the market and I have $1 million of revenue, is this the kind of thing that you would be interested in funding, or at least other, would attract other VCs for about the X amount of money? And he said, yes, these are the goals that you need to achieve before you can do that. So there's different kinds of pitches, but this is mostly oriented towards fundraising. So, as Guy Kawasaki said, 10 slides. You can boost that up to 20 if you need to by stretching some of the things. I actually am going to go through each one of these slides now. Sorry about that. Each one of these. Oh yeah, some angel groups have a slide format that you have to use, in which case, use it. But it's not good enough. Okay, so problem. You've stated a problem, and you have a solution for that problem. Problems come in two kinds, needs and wants. Your job is to prove that you have something that people need. No one wants to fund something that people want. Nobody needs an MP3 player, but Steve Jobs figured out how to make us all need one. And we are not Steve Jobs. None of you are Steve Jobs. I'm sorry. So if you were Steve Jobs, you would not be in here. You would already be Steve Jobs. I don't know how to turn you into... Here's that. I don't know how to turn you into Steve Jobs without a gun. People want to fund something that people need. They want is nice, but need is required, which is why I talk about the medical capabilities, of life-saving capabilities of sound paper, even though that's not our first market and not something we're going to do right away, because that's something you can, well, people need this, you can save lives with that. But chances are you've got something that nobody knows why anyone would want it, or it would have been invented already, or you've got something that's already been invented a dozen times and you need to show that yours is better, or that you're better, or something. So your job in the problem statement is to prove that this is such a big problem that you've got a new product or solution or service to fix the problem. This is not an easy thing to do. This is your number one task, is to have a problem that you solve. And you're not going to get anywhere without this. It's extremely hard to raise money for something that's optional. And you know, what we do with the Hawaii Angels is you do your presentation, and we ask some questions, and we kick you out of the room, and we talk about you behind your back. And the first thing that comes up is people say, no one needs this. And it's kind of cool, but you know, who's going to buy it? Though if you're Steve Jobs, you can sell anything. If you're not Steve Jobs, so this is your problem. Have a problem. Then your solution. So this is your product or service. Screenshots or demos. Again, I recommend not doing demos if you can avoid it. So screenshots, customer quotes. We tried this out. So we have a customer quote. We did a focus group with a bunch of scrapbookers, and one of the people said, the picture captures the moment and sound paper tells the story. And that's just a great quote that I've used ever since. Props are great. I love props. I use a lot of props in mine, which I will save for later. So have props, have things that you can hold up and show. And if your product is a physical product, bring it in. We've had motorcycles and electric bicycles and beer, and you better have samples of that. If you're bringing in food of any kind, you better have samples you can give away. Last month, someone came in with iPhone cases and gave away stacks of iPhone cases. I gave away 50 of them, which is probably all you're ever going to sell, but that's another story. So bring in things. Things are good. I had an interesting discussion recently about whether you should bring gifts to VCs. Back in the early days when I moved to Hawaii and I was going back to Seattle and the Bay Area to raise money, I would bring chocolate-covered macadamia nuts, not the cheap stuff, because I wanted to highlight that I was in Hawaii and that was different and stand out. The general feeling is don't do that. Probably not a good idea, but
Why's that?
because it's just weird. It's just
That's
something that.
thoughtful.
What's that?
Thoughtful.
Well, like I say, I've done it, but I was really kind of impressed with out of a number of people, I was the only one who thought it might be a good thing to do. So the general consensus was really don't do that. But
Well,
do
we
you want?
disagree.
What's that?
Tell
Yeah,
me, Mark.
there you go.
No, I'm
But
on his side.
it's a question of how you want to present yourself. Do you want to be that guy from Hawaii? Well, Hawaii is kind of weird, and they're all surfers out there, and if they were serious, they would move their company to the mainland. Yes?
What is the difference between your product and a demo?
Oh, you might demonstrate something that's not a full product yet. And it's very common. You built a prototype, or you built a completely fake demo that shows what something is going to be, but that isn't it. So that's a very common situation. That's okay, as long as you tell people what it is.
So you're saying before not to give them gifts, is it okay to give them a gift after you did the pitch, to say thank you?
I haven't thought about that particular question. I generally gave it at the beginning.
Oh, see, I was thinking after.
After, yeah, I would think that would work too. Then you could decide whether you like them well enough. But,
Yeah, higher roll budget max, no.
but I liked it. I think I generally got pretty good responses. There are one or two cases where it was really brushed away and it was clearly not accepted. But in general, people like it. Of course, if you know somebody, that's a whole other story.
Right.
So you just have to use your judgment. I haven't done it more recently because I think being in Hawaii is not necessarily a good thing unless you're doing something that's very Hawaii specific. So if you're doing a fish farm or surfboards or movies that are based here or something, then yeah. Okay. Okay, the next one is your business model. This is how you make money, and it's a little scary how often people come in there with no real idea of how you make money. You should be able to state it very simply. Our business model is we follow the Adobe Acrobat model. Anyone can read a PDF, but it costs a little bit of money to make one. And so anyone can read sound paper for free, but it costs a little bit of money to print one. You need to, it needs to have good margins. Generally, investors are going to want to see greater than 40% margin, no matter how insane that is. And you better talk about that. And I'm working with somebody now who has 40% margins, and now he says he's going to go through distribution. Well, distribution is going to take half those margins, so you don't have them anymore. And he's got to think that one through. He didn't have an answer. We've had people come to the Angels whose numbers just made no sense whatsoever. I mean, just look at the spreadsheets and say, you haven't thought this through, and that's not good. Yeah.
How many angels are in the room when you at your meetings? How many people?
I have had all different sized meetings. Now, typically in the Hawaii Angels, you do two things. You go to a screening committee that might have half a dozen people, and then if they say you're good, then you'll work with a mentor to kind of clean it up and improve things. And generally, there's 40 to 50 people in the Angels room. Yeah, but this is a good Angels group, by the way. The Hawaii Angels are one of the best Angel groups I've ever dealt with. First of all, they're nice. Second of all, they don't charge you money to present, and some people like Chris who charge a lot. Second of all, they actually give you a free lunch. They'll let you come in and watch once, so you can learn how they do it, see how other people do it. And fourth, they let you come in and do updates almost as often as you want, and other groups don't let you do that. And they write checks, and that's not an easy process. They don't just write checks instantly. That's the topic of a different discussion. So advertising is tough. If you've got an advertising model, you're going to have to prove that that you can generate this huge audience. And if you say I have a freemium model where we give away the basic thing, but then some people buy money, that has a terrible conversion rate. If you get 1% of your people to actually buy the product and everyone else is using it free. You've done pretty well. 2 or 3% is amazing. So if you come in and say 5%, we anticipate 5% of people who use this are going to convert and pay money, no one will believe you. Yes.
I thought free to play was the current game developing model that everybody was hot for these days.
Have you noticed how Zynga stopped lately? They're practically out of business. So it didn't work. Did not work. It worked for a while. And some people do it. Evernote has been successful. Dropbox is working on it. Box.net's working on it. So some companies are doing it, but the conversion rates are 1 or 2%.
What, 1% of China?
Yeah. But you can't go in and say that, so if you say, we think we can get 1%, that's a believable number, and that's okay. But if you come and say we're going to get 2 or 3%, no one's going to believe you. Even if you can do it, you have to have some evidence that you've done it already, which we'll come back to. You always have competition. If you come and say, this is a brand new product, no one's ever done anything like this before, there is no competition, you will be laughed out of the room. You always have competition. Yeah, nobody sells a talking barcode today. Instead, they're using pen and paper or a recorder, or it's on cloud. There's always competition, even if it's just the status quo. You've got to convince people to do something different. That's harder than anything else. So never stand up and say there is no competition. How you present it, a grid is often encouraged, and use people's, always use the logo instead of just the name of the company, and that's a piece of advice you'll get over and over again. So a grid is good, and normally that grid would fill the whole page. And then you would come back to if there are specific questions about competition. But again, you don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but you do have to say, yes, HP has been in this market. In my case, Hewlett-Packard was developing a barcode that talks, but you had to run through a flatbed scanner. Then Hewlett-Packard was developing an RFID chip that was going to be able to store audio, but when Mark Hurd came in, he killed all the projects in HP Labs except for 50 of them, and this was not one of the 50, so they're out of the business. So you can talk, it's okay. It's also okay to say other people try this and fail, and it's also okay to say other people are in this business, but here's why we're going to succeed, and here's why we're going to beat them. And it shows that there's a real market here. So it's okay to have competition. Don't deny that you have competition. And don't deny it's tough competition. Yeah, Hewlett-Packard is trying to own this marketplace, but here's our secret sauce where we're going to beat them, and this is why they're going to buy us, because it's cheaper for them to buy us than to do it themselves. So competition is there. Team, I don't want to see a slide with every team member. I don't want to see a slide with all your team member faces, like some people do that. You want to see who's the team members, and if you have anyone especially cool or important on your board or on your advisory board. The rest of the information will be available in the handouts you have or on your website or what have you. But what you want to demonstrate is that the people on your team have had previous successes or incredible skills, and that you know them really well, and they're not going to quit on you, or you're not going to have a big fight. Spousal teams are an issue. I've seen them work and not work, but in general, investors are worried about it, and you have to address that issue and say, well, we've been married 25 years and we haven't killed each other yet. Personally, I don't know how anyone works with their wife. I've been married 23 years and we haven't killed each other yet. That we don't start to work together. Demonstrate prior successes. My business partner and I have known each other, as I mentioned, almost 30 years, and we've pretty much been through everything you can be together, so we get along. But I've also had situations where that wasn't the case. Okay, so then you get into your intellectual property, what's different about you. So you've introduced your product. Now you get one more chance to come back about your competitive edge. So for instance, we have patent pending techniques for handling partial scans or missing data or data. We can scan the barcodes. Wait, we just got issued that patent. Yes, actually it was just awarded. So we haven't had it issued yet, but that was kind of nice news last week. So that's our fourth patent. And the week before, we got one more filed too. Yeah.
Explain IP, please.
Pardon, intellectual property. So this is your techniques or knowledge or software or plans or whatever it is that you own that nobody else has. So in my case, it is the technology for producing a barcode that talks, which includes techniques for reading little tiny dots that are always moving and out of focus. You don't have to patent, and that's another topic, but there's copyright, trademark, patents, and the most powerful one of all, which is trade secret. And people don't realize just how powerful trade secret can be, because it actually has protections in the law. So it's not just, I'm not telling you what it is. There are things you can do when somebody steals your trade secrets if you're careful about how you manage it. So you don't necessarily have to patent. I have had more investors recently dissing patents than I've ever seen in the past. Up until recently, it was always, tell us about your patents, tell us about your patent plan, what have you got patented, at least provisionals and so on. But lately I've heard patents are a waste of time, they're too expensive, don't bother, get your product out the market first, you can patent later. There's truth in both of those. There's no simple answer. Is that a question back there? Okay. There's no simple answer. We've gone the patent route. My patent agent's theory is you don't just patent the best way of doing it, but patent the second, third, and fourth best way, so you build a moat around it, and that's his way of making more money. It's hideously expensive. I don't bother with international patents. They're just money holes. If someone can't sell in the U.S., they're probably not going to sell at all, so at least that's what I tell myself. But I've given up on it. It's just too much money. Patents cost a lot of money to get, then there are filing fees, and then there's renewals, and then you never get the patent the first time. They build award it, and then you have to go back and fight for it, and that costs money. So, if you decide to go the patent route, have a good reason for it. There are 3 reasons to patent, and 2 reasons to patent. Because the third one is not real. The one that you think of is, I'm protecting my property so that no one can steal it. Well, people can always figure out another way of doing it. Patents, it's rare that there's a patent so good that they stop somebody dead. The first reason you patent is because investors want to know that you have patents. So, okay, you have patents, yes, okay. And like I said, that might be changing. The second reason is you have patents so that when somebody sues you, you have something, a portfolio to do horse trading with. So I'm in the barcode business. It's a patent minefield. The chances of me being sued once I have a successful product are 100%. So now I have a section of patents that I can go back and say, oh, well, you see what you're doing over here? Let's talk licensing. So all a patent suit is an invitation to negotiation for royalty fees. So you have something in your back pocket. But you don't necessarily need patents. A provisional buy is pretty cheap to file and buys you a year, but it is terrifying how fast that year goes by. And that's what happened to us just 2 weeks ago. We filed our utility patent the day the provisional was expiring. And because that year, just before you know it, I had to dig up the money for that. Anyway, this is where you talk about what's different. It may be your IP, it may be your team, it may be your experience, something that's different about you that other people don't have. This is your chance to crow and talk about secret sauce in the moat. Okay, marketing. So first of all, you need to understand the difference between marketing and sales. Does everyone understand that? Does anyone know the difference between marketing and sales without reading the slide? Simply put, marketing is promoting the product, sales is closing the deal. And nowadays, a lot of people have a position like I do. I'm a vice president of business development. It kind of covers everything until we get big enough to have 2 groups of people. So marketing is getting the word out there that you exist, understanding the competitive landscape, and promoting the concept. And sales is going out there and closing business, getting a getting Home Depot to carry the next iteration of Ziplocs, tie-ties, or getting into a store is really hard. If you're selling retail, it's a very, very challenging thing to do. I've talked to the folks at Manoa Chocolate, which is in just met them over the weekend, and they got into Whole Foods. They're the lowest margin, but their highest volume, but it took them 9 months to close that deal. That's sales. Marketing is, who's heard of Manoa Chocolate, right? Okay.
Lowest margin, highest volume, so can you explain?
So what that means is they make less money for each chocolate bar sold through Whole Foods, but they're selling more of it, so they're making up for it in volume. So a margin is the amount of money that you keep. So that's just a fancy word for saying here's how much money, the percentage of the sale that goes into your pocket. And again, this is off topic, but general rule of thumb is if you're producing something you're going to sell retail, you're going to have to sell it for 5 times what it costs you to make it. In order for you to make money, for the distributor to make money, for the manufacturer to make money, for the retailer to make money. When you think about that, you buy something for $5 or $6 at the store, it probably costs $1 to make it that. So, over here with Mike, he's on all the social media.
I just wanted to know, do you guys have the key for the restroom?
We'll sell you one.
Yeah, we just closed it because they cleaned the floors, so the doors are closed, so if you guys got the key, you can let yourself in.
Okay.
Because we're already done cleaning.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, social media, of course, is an important piece of your marketing plan today, but not sales. So sales must have a realistic plan. Let me tell you right now, viral is not a marketing plan. If you stand up and say, and then we go viral, again, you'll be laughed out of the room. No one knows who's going to go viral. No one knows the magic of it. No one knows how. So you've got to have a plan, and you've got to know, let's say, especially if you're a web property, you've got to know your cost to acquire customers. And if you will be asked this question, and if you can answer this question, you'll get a lot of bonus points. So what's it cost for you to turn someone who's browsing past you on Facebook into an actual paying customer? And then how much money do you make off of that customer in the next 3 months, 6 months, year? Those are key numbers. If you don't know those numbers because you're not that far, then you've got to look at some equivalent companies and say, well, here's what they did, and they're very similar to us. Or else you haven't done your homework, and people are going to know that. So we've seen numbers come in with sales numbers that are just not realistic. We can't possibly do it. Margins, again, people are looking for unrealistically high margins of 35, 40%, and if you can't demonstrate that, then you might not have a fundable company. Not every company is appropriate for angel or VC funding because they want to see really high returns. Yes?
What I think you're saying there is that when we approach investors, angel investors, that's how much they want to get back. They put in $1,000.
No, that's a different thing. 40%. That's a different thing, okay? So he was asking about how much angel investors want to make back, and that's a very good question, which I don't cover, so I'll talk about it. This is about how much when you sell a product. When I'm selling a widget and someone buys it at Home Depot for $20, how much of that $20 ended up in my pocket? So I sell it to Home Depot for $10, and they sell it for $20. So they've got a 50% margin. And if it cost me $5 to make, then I've got a 50% margin because I'm selling for $10. And then the manufacturer has to figure out what it costs them to make, so hopefully they only spend $2.50 and so on. So that's what we're talking about here. Now, his question was, what do investors hope to make back? And the answer is they hope to make back Google, but they know that they won't. So the magic number is a 10x return on investment. And fortunately, that's what I got out of my last company. So I always say, I got a 10x return on my last company. That is, if you put in $1 million, you walked away with $10 million. If you put in $100,000, you walked away with $1 million. And so we had investors put anything in from 25,000 to ultimately we did the $3 million range raise, and so they walked away with 30 million from various people who put that together. But no one knows which companies are going to do that. 90%, pick a figure, something like 90% of all venture-backed companies fail. So that means some of them have turned big in a big way.
When you're talking about the amount of money you want back, you're mentioning the angel investors. Is that what the angel investors want back, is 10x?
Yeah, so the angels are in it because they want to get what the VCs get. So the reason you're an angel investor is that you want to come in early. In return for coming in early, you want to get money on the equivalent to what the venture capitalists will make, because otherwise you wouldn't get a chance to do that. So if a venture capitalist is making 10x, the angel will want to make 10x. Now often you'll put in the sweetener so they'll make a little bit more, but then the venture capitalist will come in and turn off that sweetener. They'll figure out a way around it. So there's all kinds of ways of doing it, and I'm not really going to talk about the different ways of raising money and different kinds of deals, but angels are in it to make what VCs make. That's why they're doing it. Yeah.
And how long do they expect it to take to get $10 back?
How long do they expect, or how long is it going to take?
Oh.
Everyone wants to see a return in 3 years, but the average is 8 years.
8 years?
The average is 8 years. That's a figure I just heard recently. I am on year 9 right now. But so don't invest in me. But 10 years is not uncommon. As long as you're making progress, so long as you can show reasonable updates on what you're doing and you're honest and open about it. That's a whole other topic, is how to deal with investors once you've got them. But always be open, honest, and update frequently, at least quarterly, so people know what's going on. There was the Entrepreneurs Foundation did a panel last week called the Fail Whale Panel, where 3 people got up and talked about their big failures. So we're hundreds of millions and billion-dollar losses and stuff, and lived to tell about it. One of them was Tim Dick, who was one of the major investors and leader of the Super Ferry. And one of their investors lost $150 million. They're still friends. So what I tell people, what I tell my friends before my friends invest, I say friendship is more important. This is money you've got to be willing to piss away. I'd rather not have your money than your friendship. So don't give me money if you ever hope to see it again.
Do they have any angel investors that are out to just, if there's a good product, a good service that really helps people to just get that, in service, rather than trying to make a lot of money off of it? I thought.
No. No, not on this planet. No, there's a whole move towards social investing, and there's even a kind of business now, category B, I think it is, for businesses that have a give back. But no, investors are investing to make money. They are not your friends. They are here to make money. In fact, I have that on the slide coming right up. And I'm going to move this along because it is getting late. So then we're still on the 10 slides here, right? One of them is milestones. Where are you today? What's your product status? Do you have sales? Now here's the sad truth. It used to be you went to angels for really early money, and the product didn't even exist, and of course you had those sales and then put money in, and then once the product existed, but before you had sales, you'd go to the venture capitalists. It's all changed now. Angels expect you to have traction. They expect you to have something to show you have a sale, or you have customers lined up, maybe even a letter of intent, which is worthless. The product is almost done. I mean, it's scary. So you start with friends and families and fools, and that's just the way it is today. It's really hard to raise money right now, and it has been hard since the dot-com boom. It's just a whole different world. Always tell the truth. Promise less. Deliver more. Don't do what I do. I have not met the deadline ever. And I never deliver on time, but I try to tell people about it anyway. Which brings me to the next one, which is projections. And this is just magic. Everyone wants to see the hockey stick. where you come along so and boom, things take off. So you've got to have a hockey stick in there. Where do you put it? If you put it too big, no one will believe you. If you make it too small, no one will invest in you. I don't have the answers to this. It's going to depend on what you're doing, but it's a huge issue. Everyone's going to cut your numbers in half automatically as soon as they see them. So the best thing to do is have some idea of what's really going to happen. You've done test marketing, you've talked to people in the business, you can demonstrate that, and you better have done this anyway, right? This is all part of the research for getting your company ready for funding. You've got to have a spreadsheet that the investors can look at with some numbers, and what I do is I lay out all my assumptions. So in my business plan, I've got about 5 pages of assumptions. Here are the numbers I can tweak. If you disagree with this assumption, then I can change that number to fit your beliefs. So if you have a number, you have to be able to justify it or be willing to change it.
Do you produce any kind of takeaway for these people? You say you must
Handout,
have a
yeah.
model spreadsheet. Do you give that to them?
Yes, I make it available to them. So the Hawaii Angels use a system called GUST, which I have no idea what it stands for. You upload all your documents to GUST, and then whoever's interested can look at it. What you put up here, and I've got slides coming up with what you actually display here. So finding your summary and your call to action. So what is it that you want from these people? What is the raise? Puts very simple terms up there, dates, when it closes, if you have a lead investor, and then you do a called trial close, which I'll come back to in a little bit. So people know what's going on here, what you're looking for. Now, some groups have specified formats. This is what the Hawaii Angels used to require, which I condensed from 3 slides to 1. I don't know if they still have that, but they had these all laid out. You had to fill in the blanks. So if you're given a format, then you have to use it. I wouldn't have gone with this format myself, but it's what they asked for. Which brings me to customizing the presentation. You will use this presentation in different situations. You will change it every single time. It's like your resume. You modify it for every company you send it to, so it's not generic. And so you will customize these. Another meaningless diagram over there, but it shows that not very many angel-funded companies actually get VC funding. And then not very many of those actually succeed or get late-stage funding. So size up your audience, know who's in there, how do you affect the people in there. What I tell people when they're going to pitch to an angel group is have a plan for the audience. Have someone that you've already talked to who's ready to invest. And so they can stand up and, I like this deal, I'm in. Preferably they say, I'll be the lead for doing the due diligence, which is when they study up on whether you're any good or not, and you'll need somebody to take that role. Hopefully you'll have identified that person before you do the presentation. So you definitely want a plant in the audience if you can possibly do that. Guy Kawasaki says stay at 10,000 feet, not too high, not too low. You can dive down on occasion, but be sure to go back up. You don't go into too much detail. Now, spreadsheets. Never do this. You cannot read this. Now, I know you can't read this. But here's what it says. It says, I don't know what I'm doing. So don't do it. This one is a little more tempting. If you increase the font size a little bit, people could read it. And I've actually used something like this. Don't do it. Select a couple of charts that look something like this. This is what you do. And here's the magic number. We're going to have 18 million in sales in 2016. And then they'll cut that in half, say 9 million. But it shows the progression. So it's simple charts, not crowded, not complicated. And speaking of which, bad charts, naughty charts. 3D, there's like no need for this. So you can have, this is an example I found on the web, bad pie chart, easy to view, same data, and then a very simple line chart. Just stick with simple, don't make it fancy, unless you're a qualified designer beyond what I'm capable of doing. Okay, I want to get into a few things that are dangerous. The valuation, the round and the exit. So the question came up, is how much money do you ask for? How much money do you think you're going to return to your investors? Are you going to be diluting the company by getting future money? These are complicated topics. There is no magic number. Try to avoid giving a valuation if you can. A very popular way of raising money right now is what's called convertible debt. The advantage of convertible debt is that it does not put a valuation on your company. So I go in and say, I'm going to raise $1 million. You're going to get 6% interest or 8%, you have good interest. And when you get a Series A from a real VC, you will get as many shares per dollar as they get. So you get the same deal they get. Plus, the sweetener I use, we've got a $6 million cap on the valuation. So if we value the company later on at $12 million, you're going to get a $6 million price, which means you'll get twice as many shares as the VCs. So that's a common sweetener. If you do have a valuation, expect to negotiate. So, and then what you're evaluating is a black art. Don't have time to get into it now, but you can't just go in there to say the valuation and expect to get it necessarily. What this chart is showing is the exit. If we sell the company at 3 times earnings as projected in 2016, then we'll get $25,000, which will go back to the investors. But if we sell it at 10 times earnings, look at that, we're going to make $100 million, and isn't that cool? So these are total BS numbers, completely meaningless. Normally I do not put these in. The Hawaii Angels asked for those. That was on the sheet, so I did put them in. But I have it for my own use, so I can look at that and go, I'm going to make so much money someday. Look at that, $100 million. Yeah, baby. But don't put it up there unless you were required to.
Question.
Yeah.
From what I gather, everybody in this room is an inventor or pretty close to it. This kind of information is not usually in our scope of practice or our knowledge base. How do we get that information? How do we put
You'll need to work, if you are not capable of being a business person, doing this yourself, you will need a business partner. Period, end of story. You cannot go into a funding situation without a team. Now, there are a few people who are so good they can do the whole thing themselves, but I've never met such a person. I have my marketing and sales person, Harvey, who's incredible. I have my guy, Hank, who's my obligatory MBA. He built my spreadsheets. I've got a CFO for hire, someone who works as a CFO. I pay him hourly. And I expect to hire a company president and turn myself into CTO, the Chief Technical Officer, at some point. And that's okay to say you have a hole in your team. I should have mentioned this. As long as you know what it is and you're looking for someone, and can you recommend somebody? But you've got to have most of your team in place. Now, every once in a while, VC, if you're in the right position, you go to VC and say, I have most of the team, but I really need a co-founder. I need somebody to do this. John Shear just started co-founder service. Do you remember what it's called? Co-founders Lab. Another place that I've seen co-founders dating, where you go and try to find co-founders. I personally would never do this. I would not have a co-founder if I hadn't known for like 10 years. But not everyone has that option, so you have to find people. But if you're not a business person, you need one on the team.
Are there angel investors that will look at just the ROI and not having a percentage of the company itself?
So let me rephrase your question. Are there investors who will come in for the future revenue and get paid from the revenue? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, that's called revenue investing, revenue-based investing. You'll find it in real estate deals commonly. There's more and more interested. I tried running that past some angels here in Seattle and got no interest in it whatsoever. But under the right circumstances, it makes a lot of sense. I had a beautiful deal. My CFO put together the most elegant. It made all kinds of sense for me and for investors, and no one bought into it. It was a beautiful deal. But there are people who specialize in that. If you can prove that you're going to have significant revenue with high margins, then what you're doing is selling your future revenues for cash now, and that can make a lot of sense. But more often you'll see that in what's called a mezzanine round, where you're making some good money now and you need to raise some more money to get up to really big. But some angels will recognize that makes sense, so it is possible. Okay, how much time do you have? Oh, handouts. They're optional nowadays. Nowadays, everything's pretty much out on the web or you're mailing stuff, so I don't bother with physical handouts anymore. I used to. When I my first business plan, we numbered everyone and signed them and we tracked them. I saw one of those recently when someone was still doing that. Nah. I just hand stuff out wholesale anymore. No one's going to steal my idea. It was too darn hard for me to do. They can't do it. But one technical thing, any document you send it out in a non-alterable format, a PPS as opposed to a PPX. That is just a self-running movie, or a PDF instead of a doc. Don't send out documents because that people can change. Okay, but that's just something that everyone has a PDF reader nowadays, and not everyone has Word. So, and there are free tools for making PDFs. I use something called PDF 9.95 that cost me $9.95, and it's really easy to use. But there's all kinds of ways of making PDFs now. Never send out a Word doc. But anyway, so you make those docs, and now if you're doing the Hawaii, most of the angel groups are now using Gust. It's become very popular. So the great thing is you can upload all your documents once, and it's good for all the angel groups. You'll modify it accordingly. You can put up all kinds of documents, including movies and PowerPoints and all kinds of things. All right, so 10 to 15 minutes is good. Longer than that, you're starting to drag. I think the Hawaii Angels give you 20 minutes, including questions. Sometimes you can have 2 or 3, like this thing I did in Las Vegas. Practice your time, then practice some more. Make sure you're getting through it. You're not rushing at the end, or you're like, but you've got to hear this part. No, wait. So know what's important, know what you can drop. There's a lot of things you can probably drop. It's not as important as you think. But that takes practice. Learning what you can drop. Like I say, it took me 3 years to get my executive summary down to 1 page. Okay, again, before you go in, you need to have some things ready, or you're not ready to present. So preferably sales. Sorry, that's the way it is nowadays. I don't have sales, but at beta customers, at contracts in negotiation, I've already raised some money. I've already put in a lot of my own money. That shows commitment. Quit your day job. No one's going to invest in you if you still have a day job. Sorry. That's just the way it is. We want to see commitment. You know the story of the ham and eggs breakfast, right? The difference between being interested in or involved in and committed, right? The hen is involved, but the pig is committed. And generally, investors are going to want to see that you quit your day job and you put in whatever you have available. Board is good if you have a board or a board of advisors, and you can recruit locally known angels to be on the board of advisors before they invest. If you have some publicity that you can show, that you've got some word out, at least have your website up that's more than the landing page. At least have a registered copyright on your name and own your domain name. So the more of these things that you can do before you go in and pitch, the better shape you'll be in.
Just a heads up, we have about 20 minutes.
Yeah, so I am almost done here. So after the pitch, sit down or stand up, as the situation may be, and start and manage the discussion. Know what you want and ask for it. Ask the questions of the audience. What did you think about this? I have another slide of that. Don't be afraid to answer the tough questions. Again, if you can't answer something, just say, I don't know the answer. I'll have to get back with you. That gives you an excuse to have a further meeting. Angels here, you'll then, the week after your presentation, you'll then go to a follow-up meeting where the interested people will come. But try to get as many names of people, because the angels don't hand out the names of the people who are interested. You have to count on them actually distributing the information. So get business cards of as many people as you can, because you don't know if they've actually signed up or not. Okay, trial close. Has anyone heard about this? It's something you do in the sales situation. You're testing to see whether they're ready to buy. So at the end, how does that deal sound to you? Does this make sense? If I fix this, you had a problem with my IP, if we got a patent filed, would that make this make this product interesting to you. You're testing them out. Don't be afraid to do this. In fact, it's vital to understand. If you get the wrong answer, that tells you a lot about where you're at. So you wrap up with next steps, and then I'll get back to you with this. I'll provide you with that. My stuff will be up on Gus. I'll see you. I'm going to see you all next week at the follow-up meeting for the Angels and so on. So be very specific about what you want. I'm especially looking forward to seeing you there, because I could tell that you were interested in the product. Resources, obviously there are, oh yes, a lot of stuff. I just threw a lot of stuff at you. The slides are up on SlideShare. There's a link, and Roger will send out the link. It is tough. There is a lot to learn here. It's not easy. If it was easy, anyone could do it. But surprisingly enough, especially here in Hawaii, people want you to make it. They really do. It's a great, supportive community. People will do anything they can do to help you. If they can write you a check, they will. But if they can do introductions and contacts and provide you your mentor, they'll do it. And it's really true anywhere. People want to help. They want to see you succeed. So you also have to be crazy though, because 99% of all businesses fail, right? You've got to believe that you're the exception. If you don't believe that you're the exception, then you're not in it. You're not committed. So I believe I'm going to make it, even though everything reasonable says I'm not going to. So I'm not reasonable. Lots of research. There's tons and tons of stuff out there on the web. Right here, the guy who runs the Hawaii Angels is Rob Robinson. He wrote the book on angel investing. So if nothing else, you should buy a copy and wave it in front of him. That'll make him feel good. He is an investor in my company, and I expect to have him on the board when I form a board. Bill Spencer, who's very involved in the Angels and runs HBCA, is on my board of advisors. I highly recommend everyone read How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a great book, a classic. If you're concerned about design, any of Edward Tufte's books are fantastic. And if you get a chance to see him do his one-day presentation, one-day seminar, by all means you should. Look into the incubators such as Blue Startups and the other ones around town. Toastmasters is, has anyone here done Toastmasters? Isn't it great? It's great.
They're kind.
What?
They are kind.
They are kind. But, they teach you a lot. Okay, it's 1:15. I can do a 3-minute pitch for my company if anyone's interested in seeing it, or we can just call it quits. I think you've heard a lot of it, and we can have a few and just go into a discussion. I'm not hearing any enthusiasm. How about just sit down and have a discussion?
So we can see what one would really look like.
Oh, you do want? All right. So this is my pitch. And I'm going to go through it pretty quick. I'm not going to worry about being exactly on time. Okay. Hi, my name is Ken Berkun. I'm the founder and president of Labels That Talk. Our product is Sound Paper. You all remember the paperless office? Mm-hmm. And whoops. And the always-on wireless connection, and the cloud that never goes down. Yeah, I don't remember any of those things either. So Sound Paper is the only way to store data on paper that is always on, low cost, and reliable, because you never have to go out to the web. We are the anti-cloud. Sound Paper always works because all the data is in the barcode itself, whether it's on a product label, used in security, or used for advertising. Sound Paper is the first barcode that gives you a good user experience because it never fails. We are a very high density barcode of our own design, where we cram thousands, tens of thousands of bytes of data into the barcode itself. So you can get 10 seconds of audio in just 1 square inch, but you can make it as big as you want. By the way, I mentioned we had an issue. People come away thinking you can only do 10 seconds, but in fact you can make this as big as you need to. You can cover a whole page with it if you wanted. We work with any kind of ink and paper on any printer, including commercial presses. what we're doing is developing a free iPhone app and then an Android app to allow you to read it. So reading is always free, plus the programming interface so you can build this into other programs. So finally, it's a barcode that works. So many people use a QR code. How many of you here have used a QR code? How many times? Once? Twice? And then you stop using it because it doesn't give a good user experience. It goes out to the web and never comes back. Or it brings you to a worthless web page. When you scan our barcode, it instantly talks to you and says, try this fine red wine. It goes very well with the old tennis shoes that you're serving tonight. Winemakers love it because they want to tell you about their products, but people don't read. As my wife says, another step forward for illiteracy. But in fact, we also do very well for instruction and language learning. It's not our first startup. My last company, SingleFish.com, turned 10x to our investors. We've been around. Harvey and I worked together at Digital Equipment for over a decade. We've known each other more than 30 years. Hank Turner is our obligatory MBA, keep us on track. Our advisory board includes someone you know, Bill Spencer, but also some pretty powerful people such as Mark, who's a VP of Finance for Alaska Air, and Ed Lusowski, who holds the Bill and Melinda Gates Chair of Computer Science at University of Washington. These are folks I can call on the phone anytime for advice. Plus, in addition to providing a great user experience, we actually are beneficial. This is a great tool for the blind. We've been working with the National Federation of the Blind right from the beginning. As we charge a small amount of money for the barcode, if it's used for the blind, we do not charge any money. That's part of our give back. We have Join the Entrepreneurs Foundation, which is also a way of giving back to the society. Only 10% of the blind read Braille, by the way, so this is another way of communicating information. We use the Adobe Acrobat model for pricing, so it's very simple. If you anyone can read it anytime for free. If you're printing it, it costs you a small amount of money. How much depends on volume, but if you go into large volumes, it'll typically about a third of a penny. One of our customers is CCL Label. You've never heard of them, but they're the world's largest printer of product labels. They print for L'Oreal and Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson and so on. They're a $3 billion a year publicly traded company. Another company that's kind of more fun is Katz America. Katz is the world's largest printer of beverage coasters. They print 3.5 billion coasters a year. Now, we get a third of a penny for everyone with sound paper on them. 3.5 billion, you do the math. And so a lot of interesting things, fun things you can do with that. This is an example. Both Hallmark and Berkun greetings are very interested in personalization. You upload a picture of the message. Now you can upload, when they launch, be able to upload audio as well and have a personalized greeting card. So we have a lot of growth planned. We expect to ship product at the end of this calendar year. We'll probably do about 500,000 next year, and then we think someone like Katz will probably do 500,000 themselves in the following year, and someone like CCL will probably move to an all-you-can-eat multi-million-dollar payment after that, rather than a per barcode. So it's a pretty serious growth plan. Almost there. We are in beta. I can demonstrate this, which I will do after the meeting. We have our customers lined up. We have 4 patents issued or allowed, with 4 more pending. We'd like to file 3 more with some of the money that we're hoping to raise. And then all we have to do now is final performance optimization, clean up the UI a little bit, and we are done. And that's what we're raising money for. So we're raising minimum raise of 100,000, maximum of 300. It's common shares, very, very simple terms. The use of funds is mostly to finish the iPhone app, get the Android app done, and our programming interface, and product launch, and other crap. Which, by the way, I would not actually put in the real app, but I was tempted. And that is Sound Paper by Liberals That Talk, and I look forward to actually demonstrating the product to all of you and talking about it. Thank you. That wraps things up, and at this point, I'm going to sit and take 5 minutes of questions. Yes.
Did you already, I came in late, did you already demonstrate your sound paper to the?
No.
To me, the first thing you should have did was to demonstrate and show it.
Demos always break.
What's that?
Demos always break. But here's my card, and I do this when I plan this. Actually, we bring in external speakers so that you would be able to hear this. So you all won't be able to hear this, but so what we're doing is we're speeding this up so it's instantaneous. So that is actually in that barcode there. It doesn't have to go out to the web. It always works. You can put a URL in too, so while you're waiting for the website to pop up, you're being entertained by the audio. You can put in animations, longer messages, of course, and you can print this on just about anything.
Did you have to run an app?
Yeah, so you ran the SoundPaper app, which is not yet out. That's what we're finishing up. But also our programming interface kit or software developer kit will allow us to be built into other QR readers. So ScanBuy is in 60 million phones, and they're ready to add us in. So we'll be overnight at 60 million phones, which covers the distribution issue. And you won't care whether you point your phone at a QR code or a SoundPaper code. It'll just work.
Are you going to hand out your business cards?
Yeah, I've got business cards here.
So you were saying that QR codes are passe already?
QR codes depends on who you ask. The people in the business think that they're still great, but in actual use, I don't see them really catching on. They've been great for us. I no longer have to explain what a 2D barcode is. So they're perfect because they were great. They introduced things and then they failed. And we came in with a better solution.
And do you see near frequency
RFID? Oh, NFC? That really solves a different problem than us. So you're not going to put an NFC tab on every bottle of Coca-Cola. It's too expensive, even at a penny per.
Have you heard what Walmart is starting to require?
Well, Walmart started with barcodes. Then they required RFID. Now they're NFC. None of them have worked.
Okay.
I'm not too worried. But it solves a different problem. That's a tracking problem.
Right.
It's not on every bottle. It's in the case level or the container level.
The article I read, that they're going to require them on Snicker bars even. So if somebody picks up a Snicker bar and drops it off in the baby department,
I will see that when I believe it. It's too expensive. I don't believe it. All right, any other questions on pitching in general, angel groups, anything like that? Thank you.
You could make these things with your printer, you can print them out or something?
Yeah, you can print them at home on almost any inkjet or laser printer, or commercially on anything else. Yeah?
Prior to smartphones coming out, since you've been working on it for a while, did you have some kind of a reader?
That is correct. We built our first one out of Legos. We really did. Now, yeah, we actually started with our own hardware. We were going to sell a kit that was a scanner and a printer, a label printer, for $300 to scrapbookers, and they would have bought them, would have sold the zillions, but we never raised $1 million that it takes to actually build hardware. We had a company that was actually going to build a hardware company in the scrapbooking business, all lined up, and they were going to take care of all the inventory and all the parts and stuff and manufacturing, but we couldn't raise money to build hardware. Well, that was, during the worst of times.
Right.
So we just hung in there while the smartphones came around. Now all of our work is all about dealing with the smartphone situation. It's always out of focus, it's always in motion, and so we've had to develop some algorithms with some help from folks at the that really state of the art for de-blurring images and doing things. So we've got to get those patented. So it's all about that, and I can't wait to try the 5S. We should be really, really good at it. Yes?
With your product here, the idea, you didn't have your team, but you had this idea. Do you think you could still get it sold and have investors for it?
No, I had to build my team. I was fortunate, having been through this once before. I had some funds that I could put into it, so I could, hire some people. I've made some really bad mistakes. I lost a couple years by hiring somebody who didn't deliver. Lost a year on that, and then a year recovering, redoing everything he was supposed to do. That was an expensive mistake. No, there's no way I could have taken this with just the concept and gone to anyone other than friends and family and raise money. There's no outside person. I don't have a reality distortion field like Steve Jobs does. There are people who could do this. There are people who are good enough at this that they could take anything and sell it. I am not one of them, and neither are you. Sorry. You know who you are if you're one of them. Yes.
And the Hawaii Angels group, how big a deal do they typically do, or what is the range?
They range from 50,000 to 200, 250,000. Occasionally $500,000. $500,000 would be a big deal. I think they may have done some bigger than that, but 200,000 is probably typical.
What if your project requires various stages in it? In my case, we're talking about building a hydroelectric power plant, multi-year project, multi-phase project. How do we approach the angel investors to get into it to get that first stage rolling?
That's really, really hard. Fortunately, we have the energy incubator here, which I hope you know about. It would be a great thing for you to do.
I mean, the energy accelerator?
Yeah, the energy accelerator.
They will only work with a project that has a prototype, and they won't fund anything unless they have a prototype.
Then the other thing that you can look at is people who are doing the seawater air conditioning. They presented to the Hawaii Angels recently. The one in Waikiki, there's already one started in downtown, and the folks doing Waikiki presented to the Angels. I don't know if they've raised any money, but you could follow them as a model. I think that's just unbelievably hard to do. You're probably going to have to find, a very wealthy person who's interested in such things. For instance, the Uapona group, Pierre Omidyar and his folks who are interested in green energy and stuff. So the thing that you do would be find the group that's focused on your kind of thing. I personally would not tackle it. I don't think I could pull off such like that.
We've run out of time. Ken, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.